Probably the one time I was really scared at ski tip was when Dr. Peter Gray's second son, John, was born. Peter had come out for several years, always bringing a bunch of youngsters, putting them in ski school and watching over them. This one time, he and his wife Carly had decided to come out, even though she was expecting some 2 months hence. I don't know if she skied that day, but I do know it was my night to cook. And as I was stirring the gravy, Peter came tearing out into the kitchen. "Carly's time has come," he said. I was stunned. "I can't help you. I don't know a thing about delivering a baby." "I know that," Peter said anxiously. "I'm driving her right now to Denver. What I need is a doctor's name so I can call him." With great relief, Bonnie and I looked up the phone number of an obstetrician who often came to Ski Tip. Darn, I thought, why isn't he here now? Peter and Carly made it into Denver just in time. Peter phoned that all went well. The guests with us drank a big toast to the new baby and his parents. As one guest remarked, "Peter is the kindest man I know. He would probably have opened several bottles of champagne on this occasion." I pretended I didn't hear the champagne hint, but we all agreed Peter is the kindest man we know. Sometimes we saw our ski tip guests in summer. Peak 10 outside of Breckenridge had been discovered to have one of the longer and better summer snowfields in Colorado. At least some of our guests had heard this. One day in mid-July 1954, some of our winter guests came from Chicago, arrived, and announced they wanted to ski Peak 10. We, having a Jeep, could drive them up on the old Briar Rose mining road, which climbed to almost the base of the snowfield. Soon word got around that we were going to Peak 10. Harry Baum offered his Jeep also, and we had another party of skiers join us. It was quite a climb up the steep part of the snow. I wondered how our low altitude guests would do. One fellow, climbing eagerly ahead of us, took a wrong turn and reached the peak next to Peak 10. There was a satellite dip between the two peaks. When he finally got to the top of the snow on Peak 10, he announced, "I've climbed 2 mountains and I haven't come down one yet." We all traversed and climbed while carrying our skis over our shoulders, except for one, who decided he'd rather climb with his skis on. He would traverse and kick turn, and then traverse and kick turn. This worked well until he got to the steeper part where he had made a long traverse. Finally, he had to kick turn or continue into the rocks. He started the kick turn, one ski pointed west, the other east. He looked down on the roofs of Breckenridge, 4,000 feet below, with a gasp he leaned back. His skis shot out in both directions, and he found himself sliding down the snow. He had bought a new pair of jeans. He made a furrow in the soft snow, leaving a blue streak of stain down the mountain for about 500 feet. With a cold rear, he said, "I think I'll head back for Chicago and leave my skiing for the winter." There was one small group of guests I shall never forget, my one and only brush with the underworld. There were 5 of them, all men. One had phoned the day before to make the reservation. I glanced out of the office window as a car drove up with 5 men in it. Only one got out and came up the walk. I started to greet him, but he brushed me aside, saying, "Just a minute." He walked into the living room, looked around, and then peered into the dining room. I followed close at his heels as he strode into the rathskeller, stood there for a minute, looking everyone over, and then strode back out. I was still scurrying along behind him as he opened the front door and beckoned to the other four to come in. The next morning they took off for skiing, I presumed. At the end of the day, here they came. First, the one fellow came in, looking around each room before beckoning the others to come in. I went up to him and asked, "Well, where did you ski today?" "Oh, ski today?" He seemed confused by my question. "Why, at Vail, Breckenridge, and I guess Arapahoe." Wow, I thought, how do you do that? Judy, our pretty daughter-in-law, was helping out at the bar when the Italian-looking gentleman, tallest of the five, walked over and started flirtation. He began his conversation, Judy told me later, with, "Do you know what a black mausoleum is?" Judy must have looked puzzled. Then, answering his own question, he told her, "It's the trunk of a Pontiac." Judy wondered, "What's your business? I mean, what do you do?" "Oh," he answered her with a sly smile, "I'm a juice man." "A juice man? Do you mean you sell orange juice?" As Judy was pondering this, one of our wealthy Chicago guests walked into the Rathskeller. The Italian man muttered, but loud enough for Judy to hear, "We should have a bit of his business." Later that evening, Judy related this weird conversation to our Chicago guest and to me. He laughed. "Edna, when they pay their bill in the morning, it will be in fresh new $20 bills. Do you have any idea who those guys are? That nice article about Ski Tip in the Pontiac magazine, Safari, probably brought them here. But don't worry," he assured me. "Having seen Ski Tip, they won't want a piece of this business." As predicted, the next morning, the fellow paid their account in crisp $20 bills. The next summer, a Chicago attorney friend of ours stopped by. Still curious about those five men, I showed him the registration book. "All the addresses are freeways," he told me. "The funny thing is, though, their names aren't wholly fictitious. One is complete, and the others have only their first names correct. I've seen them in court." When the one paying the bill asked me if we did a good business here, I told him, "I've never lived anywhere where I've been so poor and still loved it." He had a funny expression on his face, almost envious. What really puzzled me was that years later, wanting to show someone else the names of those five, I couldn't find them. The page where they had registered had been neatly cut out. Summers were for us. One summer, Max built us a sauna. It was great fun running from the sauna and jumping off the little dock into the icy waters of our lake. One evening, after a sauna, I ran through the bright moonlight to the lake. Just as I dove in, I heard a splash. I couldn't stop in midair, so I prayed, "Oh my God, don't let me land on a beaver's back." Hastily climbing back on the dock, I watched the beaver, as frightened as I was, swimming to his house. Cutting through reflections in the moonlit water, he left a silver-edged wake. In the winter, with the lake frozen, the guests solved the problem of cooling off after a sauna. "What's wrong with the snow?" I quickly bought some bigger, larger towels. No one brought bathing gear to Ski Tip. For a while, I never realized the nightly show the sauna-taking guests were putting on for the guests watching from the living room windows. One night, hearing hilarious laughter, I went in to watch the show myself. Unaware of their audience were several fellows jumping and rolling in the snow. Their big towels were wrapped around their waists and pinned with big safety pins. Now heavy and wet with snow, the towels began to sag and slip down till they hung from their hips. "Oh, no," said one of the audience. "We were there just now, too. We must have looked like those guys, like a bunch of Indians getting ready to storm the fort at night." It was 1 a.m., and I was sound asleep in our bedroom upstairs. The head of our bed was against the wall, which backed onto the living room fireplace. Suddenly I was wakened by sharp and loud hammering right near my head. Wondering what was happening, I hurried through and threw a robe on and rushed downstairs. Peeking around the corner into the living room, I saw Max and some of the guests looking up to the top of the fireplace. "Hi, Mom." Dale Gallagher, our local Forest Service ranger, greeted me. He was practically upside down and suspended from ropes near the peak of the roof. "I'm showing your guests how to climb a rock face. I'm going across the ceiling over to those beams. We're pretending this is an overhanging rock up here." I watched in fascination as he proceeded like a human fly. Dale, with another mountain climber, had just returned from completing a new ascent of Devil's Tower in Wyoming. Life magazine had published photos of these two men dressed in white to show up better as they made the ascent of the vertical rock face of this dramatic tower. The pitons are still firmly in place in the stones of our fireplace, and across the ceiling, no one since at Ski Tip has had the courage or the expertise to attempt the climb. In going over my notes on guests, I sometimes shudder or laugh. There were so many great times and funny things happening in between the worrying times, such as the plumbing not working when we used the old two-seater privy back of the old cabin for the emergency, the well going dry, or the guests all getting sick after drinking the glue the ski patrol had brewed over an open fire they had built outside the old cabin. They had heated the brew in a brand new galvanized garbage can they had just bought. I look back and I can see myself chasing guest kids away from taking apart my antique Seth Thomas clock, or the guest I surprised in the middle of the night down in the Rathskeller, shouting and swinging our double-barreled shotgun, vintage 1830. He said to me as I took it away from him, "I swear I heard a burglar down here." "Well," I informed him, "you could hit him over the head with it. That's all you could do with that gun. I doubt it's been fired since before the Civil War." The end of the spring skiing would come, and with it a wonderful day. I would march around to the front of Ski Tip and kick the front door shut. We're closed for the summer. Yet knowing that come fall and the first snowflakes, I'd be looking forward to the next ski season with Ski Tip full of another Pandora's box of winter guests.